Hello and welcome to the Tavern Chat podcast. I'm your host, Eric Tenkar, your bartender in the OSR, your main proprietor at the Tenkar's Tavern blog, and don't forget our Discord server at the Tenkar's Tavern Discord. With me today for the latest Designers and Makers Fireside Chat, where we talk with different people from our community, is none other than James Spahn. And I could go on forever about James's accomplishments besides his be known for White Star, working on Star Wars, working on the One Ring, numerous other projects. But I'd be bragging about my best friend. So, James, welcome.
Good evening. Another plug I wanted to make for part of the Tavern community. We now have Tenkar's One Shot Role Playing, which is a new Facebook group specifically to help people find gamers on short notice, drop in, drop out games, one-shot games. So that people can actually get to gaming.
It's a good idea, and it's probably good too if you have something that you want to play test, like New Adventure or something like that. And you need play testers. It's going to be a perfect place to find people.
I hadn't even thought of that, but you're exactly right.
Being that I know so many people that are, always having issues trying to find play testers for their games, it's going to be a place where you can round up players. And we'll probably add a whole section on the Discord server at some point to support this. If you don't want to make your own Discord server, they're free. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do it, but if you want to use an established place, we'll put some rooms up that you could use for such. So, James, I'm going to ask you questions that I probably know many of the answers to because I know you pretty well, but our listeners don't. So I'm going to ask you how you got into role playing.
It was 19. Actually, well, I have an older brother who's about 7 years older than me, and I used to look through his D&D books, and I found them like interesting and cool, but I didn't understand any of it. And then at about 1987, I used to go to the local flea market to buy my comic books, and he had this weird book on the shelf that said Star Wars, the role-playing game. And I was like, wait, you can do that? And I didn't understand what an attack matrix or a saving throw was, but I understood what a lightsaber was. So I bought it, and that was pretty much my first steps into RPGs. And then once I got really what an RPG was, I pretty quickly moved on to second edition AD&D. And then from there, I just, been role-playing the rest of my life.
You've been role-playing and then some, but we'll get to that. What's your go-to RPG system, James?
That's not a fair question.
Well, no, I know it isn't because you've written some. You've written for others. So, yeah, it's not a fair question.
If I had to pick one, it's probably pretty obvious to anybody who knows me. It would be some incarnation, whether the original Matt Finch version or the slightly variant Seattle Hill Games version of White Box.
Fair enough. But obviously, you're comfortable with many more systems than I ever have been. So we'll delve into that.
I've played a few.
Yeah, well, all right. So now, how do you feel about racist class?
It's my preferred way of doing things. I think racist class is hugely important because demi-humans are, by definition, inhuman. They cannot do the same things that humans can. They do not come from the same cultural backgrounds that humans do. They don't have the same values. They don't have the same physiology. So giving them an iconic identity tied specifically to their race as class, it locks them in a place of mythology, in a place of strangeness, and it makes humans valued in their ability to be diverse, despite not having often the much more powerful advantages that race as classes do.
That's probably the most, I'm not going to say scholastic answer, but certainly the deepest answer I've seen to that one. It's not just opinion. You're given a background reason as to why it works.
It's something I think I think a lot about that when it comes to designing role-playing games is the why. If I like something, if it jumps out at me, I immediately gravitate to the why, and I start thinking a lot about that. So race as class really hugely jumps out at me, and I can make pretty strong arguments for it. And race as class does not mean all halflings are just halflings. I don't mind race as class having 2 or 3 different classes that are of the same race.
As kind of like Axe.
Yes, I think Axe is a wonderful game. Alex is a genius game designer. But Axe does it right. Here's this unusual inhuman race, and here are the ways they are different from humans as reflected in 2 or 3 classes.
Yeah, I love the way Axe handles it. I think it's one of the better. What's the word I'm looking for here? Not the direct clones, but when they branch off the.
I heard a term that I really like called a neo-clone, and I think that's
neo-clone.
a really
I
good way
like
to put
that.
it.
Yes, and I think that's probably the premier neo-clone then in my mind, especially when it comes to fantasy, because it handles that so well. It still remains true to the original games it's built upon. So it's wonderful. All right, let's go on to the idea of save or die, and I'm not talking about the podcast that we were both on for a while, but I'm referring to save or die as a mechanic.
I like it, but I put an asterisk in the corner there. I don't like save or die as an immediate effect. Because and you're dead sucks. It makes people not have fun. A lot of save or die effects in old school D&D are most often, in my experience, poison based. And if that's the case, I generally say, well, this poison is going to kill you in XYZ rounds. You might have 1d6 rounds or 1d6 hours, but this poison will kill you. But instead of just halting gameplay, it suddenly turns gameplay in a completely different direction. Because not only, and oh, by the way, can I swear?
Yeah, dude.
Okay.
Listen, you can say fuck, you can say shit.
Great.
Yeah.
So immediately, instead of it being from, we have to stop, say you're running Castle Ravenloft, we have to stop Strahd, to, oh shit, I've been poisoned. We need to find an antidote ASAP. And then, even if you do solve that, the amount of resources you expended to solve the immediate problem suddenly make the more extended problem of, say, defeating Strahd more complicated later. So save or die, when done properly, instead of completely bringing a game to a screeching halt, it adds layers of depth and complication to the game.
I like that. And I think something that should be remembered, I don't think I brought this up in the past, but when it comes to the original adventures that were published by old TSR, the initial ones, they were all convention modules. So killing off characters via save or die, even fairly randomly, wasn't as big a deal because it was a one-shot. But when you're running it as a campaign, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, like I ran when they did the 3rd edition adaptation of Tomb of Horrors, which they put up as a free PDF, I ran it for my local group, but I sat down and I said to them, I am running Tomb of Horrors. This is separate from our campaign because everybody wants to, give it a crack.
Right.
And they made characters specifically for that. So in an instance where everyone's got that same buy-in, then save or die as an immediate effect can work. But I find it to be one of the key factors for me in role-playing is role-playing games most often are power fantasy.
Right.
And if they're power fantasy, then one of the key things there, and this is what I think makes horror RPGs so difficult, is agency. Character, agency, and the player satisfaction that comes from that agency. Save or die as an immediate effect immediately removes all that agency. You're dead. You have no control over it other than one throw of a die. Now, you can make arguments that, well, if they had prepared better or XYZ, they could have not died. But when it comes down to one die or you're dead, without any kind of build-up, then it's just not fun. So, again, I think way too much about this crap.
Oh, that's okay. And hey, pretty much it was save or die for our party 2 weeks ago when we killed ourselves with fumes.
You know what? If you guys had made your save, at least half the party would have lived, and there was a damage roll involved. And it was a conscious choice to take that course of action. And there were ways that you guys could have learned more about the situation. Yep. It wasn't like I'm poisoned and I'm dead. If the person who had lit that fire had said, "Hey, what do I know about this material I'm lighting on fire?" I would have given them an intelligence check, and I would have said, "Oh, well, this is the liquid isn't flammable, but the fumes are highly explosive," which would have entirely changed the course of action. But the player didn't have the forethought to do that, slipped his mind, whatever, and that's fine. But then there's a consequence.
It slipped all of our minds.
It was hilarious.
We were all in. It's like, yeah. And as an aside, I think that is something that is fairly common to a lot of PC parties. Fire is a wonderful thing. Your players will go out of their way to make things explode and burn, even if it's to their detriment. And I don't know why that is.
One of my favorite quotes is in the original novel Peter Pan. Peter says, "Oh, the cleverness of me." And that is an instance where you guys were so pleased with how clever you were being, you went all in. And you went all in quick and hard. And I remember thinking, oh my God, they're really going to do this. So, I mean, but at the same time, that group in particular, I knew could deal with a TPK. Like you guys weren't going to be mad. You weren't going to feel screwed. As a matter of fact, the first words out of everyone's mouth after you guys died was the guy who lit the fire went, "I'm really sorry, guys." And everyone else was like, "Nah, it's cool." And immediately people just started rolling new characters. So in a group like that a saber die mechanic might work, but even then, you still feel screwed if you put on a cloak of poisonous and you're dead.
Oh yeah, no, jeez, yeah, and my thing too is if you're going to put in a mechanic like that, you have to. I'm not saying advertise it, but again, you're going for the big MacGuffin. You're in the treasure room. You finally found the vault. You know it's going to be protected. You know there's going to be risk involved. Take every step you can to find the risk that's involved and neutralize it. If you don't take those actions, then you kind of get what you deserve.
Yeah, or at least the consequences. You might live, you might die, but there will be consequences for your actions.
Yeah, just that random infinite pit in some random corridor just doesn't seem like a fair way to kill a character off.
Because it removes agency. When you guys were setting that fire, you were taking agency. You were taking a proactive course of action. So you died not because you failed your save, but because the agency you took was not successful. It's subtle subtext in a role-playing game, but it's hugely important versus we died versus we got screwed.
Oh, certainly. All right, well, let's get the last let's get the last question out of the way so we can roam freely. But James, you came in with Tui. You were in your teens, I guess, right?
Yeah, I was in my 12, 13 before I really got into D&D. I stayed solely with Star Wars for quite some time.
So, what would that 12 or 13-year-old you think to see where you are in the hobby now? I mean, what you've accomplished, what you're working on, what you will accomplish. What would they think?
10 or 12-year-old James would look at 40-year-old James and go, "You're a liar. That will never happen." And not to toot my own horn, but I'm going to rattle some stuff off here. If I looked at 12-year-old James and said, "That Star Wars role-playing game you're holding in your hand, you're going to write for one of those. You're going to write for Lord of the Rings. You're going to write for Legend of the Five Rings. You're going to win an Emmy. You're going to win an Origins. You're going to have people kind enough to ask you to come to gaming conventions. And you're going to meet some people that are going to be your friends for the rest of your life. You're going to meet your wife because of this. It's going to change who you are forever." I would have looked at 40-year-old James and said, "That's complete horseshit."
Amazing where we wind up, isn't it?
It's very strange. It's still strange for me now,
Well, Now we're going to talk about you now, because we're past those 5 background questions, so people have a little bit more of an insight into James the Squirrel Spahn. But I mean, seriously, James, I've known you now for a couple of years. Really, I couldn't think of anybody else I want to work on stuff in this hobby with aside from you. I mean, you're just a pleasure, because we although we are very different personalities, we do have a certain similar way of thinking out certain things as we've learned.
You can say it, Eric. I'm a moody bitch.
Dude, I'm married to an Irish American woman. You know, so but I mean, and it's even weird when you look back and how we made a connection, because we basically connected over Swords of Mystery.
Yeah, you're responsible. I mean, my interest in swords and wizardry began pretty much with when I got to know you, because I was a Labrador guy for years.
I know.
For 3.5 years, I put out nothing but Labrador books, and I put out my little $1 classes, and I had I was a working guy. I was a guy in the OSR who just did this little niche thing, and I had my thing. And you were like, "Oh, you should take a look at Swords and Wizardry," and I was like, "Eh." And I read complete, and I liked it. But then I found White Box, and I was like, "Wait a minute!" And I looked at White Box, and I was like, "This is an amazing foundation of a game."
Yes.
And no one's doing anything with it. And I said to myself, either A, it sucks when you play it and nobody's playing it, or B, it's an underserved market and nobody's grabbed it. So
it was obviously B.
Yeah, it was obviously B, because I did a little book of classes, because it's funny. This goes back to my finding my footing in AD&D Second Edition. I basically went through and took a bunch of the AD&D Second Edition classes and white boxified them with my first white box book. And that was super successful, and I was blown away by the reaction. So I did a little monster book and a little magic item book, and those were both very successful. And so I was like, there's really a market for this. People really like this. And so I combined the 3 books and added a lot of extra content when I did the omnibus. And when the omnibus was a big hit, I was like, all right, let's shoot the works here and do a sci-fi game. Let's take White Box and see if it can handle sci-fi. And that's how White Star ironically came about, because I wanted to push the limits of White Box. And because I said, well, I'm never going to get to work on Star Wars, so I might as well make my own dream sci-fi RPG. And right after White Star came out was when I ended up in contact with Fantasy Flight Games, and soon after White Star came out, I got my first contract with them. And it was funny because I thought, well, with this out, they're never going to hire me, because, there's a lot of serial numbers filed off of White Star and a lot of clear inspiration from Star Wars. So they're never going to hire me. And sure enough, they did, in spite of my brutal honesty when they asked me several questions. Really? Oh, Sam Stewart, who is an awesome, awesome dude with the sexiest voice I've ever heard in my entire life. We were emailing back, I literally sent Fantasy Flight a blind email. I had a friend who was a freelancer on West End Games Star Wars way back in the day, buddy of mine named Wayne Humfleet. And I sent him a fan letter when I was 15 years old, fan email, and we stayed in contact, and we're really good friends now. He's an awesome dude. So 20 years later, 25 years later, we still talk. And I said, Wayne, do you know anybody who still works on Star Wars? And he's like, well, Sterling still does. Talk to him if you want to work on it. And I said, okay. So I blind Facebook messaged Sterling Hershey, who, if you look up his resume of RPGs, it's phenomenal. He's got a stack of books taller than he is as a person. Wow. And he said, contact Sam Stewart over at Fantasy Flight Games. So I did. I sent Sam Stewart a blind email trying to see if they were looking for people on Star Wars. And he said, well, have you played the game? And I said, yes. And he said, well, what do you think of it? And I said to myself, well, I can be honest here or I can kiss his ass. And I opted for honesty because it's a lot harder to juggle bullshit than it is to just the truth is always the truth.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I said to him, I said, well, you're asking people to play a game that requires custom dice that use a non-numeric system. You're asking for a $60 book as a buy-in plus a $15 set of dice, at least one set of dice. So it's $75 before you can meaningfully play the game that uses a mechanic that is completely alien to the vast majority of tabletop gamers. It's a huge barrier to leap over, not to mention that $60 book is 430 pages. So it's daunting just to even look at. I said, the rules themselves read on the page like an absolute train wreck, and they play like a dream. But getting people to get all past that, to actually sit down, make characters, and roll dice is a hell of a feat. And I think it's detrimental to the game's growth. And I thought, well, that'll be the end of that. He's never going to contact me. And he basically said, all right, I might have something for you in a few weeks. We'll be in touch. Which I thought was a very polite way of saying, go piss up a flagpole.
Okay, fair enough.
Which is fair, totally. The thing is, even if I never got the gig, I knew I tried. You very rarely regret the things you do. You regret the things you don't do.
Right.
So 3 weeks later, I get an email saying, hey, James, I haven't forgot about you. Should have something soon. And I was like, oh, he was being serious. And I came to them after I worked on Tolkien on the One Ring because I wanted to have a resume in my pocket of a major IP because that showed experience and the ability to work on an IP and equally important, recognize the importance of a non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah, you know what? Many people don't understand what that is. I mean, I had to deal with that when I was working, and that's a huge thing to sign. It certainly, you got to respect it because if you don't, there are legal implications that will break you.
2 words: Disney lawyers.
Well, yeah.
So he came back to me a total about 6 or 8 weeks later and offered me my first Star Wars gig. And I was like, holy crap, I'm going to write Star Wars. I'm going to write, freaking official Star Wars stuff. And so meanwhile, White Star was like tearing up the charts. White Star sat at number 1 on RPG Now for like 9 months straight. It was ridiculous. So I was like in hog heaven for that, like, oh my God. And I'm sitting in my corner going, I'm just a dude. What the hell's going on here? This is a lot. But you get under that NDA and you do the job. You set it aside. And even if you do feel like you're just a gamer rolling dice, that's okay. When you sit down to write something, especially as a freelancer, it's not your job to judge your work. That's your editor's job. Your job is to do the task assigned to you. And then when it's done, you are selling it to someone else. They can change it. They can edit it. They can never publish it. You are quite literally, as a freelancer, selling your words. It's like selling a car. If someone pays you for a car and then they drive it off a cliff in front of you, they paid for it. They can do whatever the hell they want with it. And that's really hard for freelancers, a lot of freelancers to figure out, especially when they're working on an IP they're passionate about, because that passion is what drives them to do it. But you have to have that passion and then be able to let it go. And it's really hard sometimes. But, I'm 40 years old and I can honestly say I've accomplished every professional dream I ever had as a child. I'm certainly not rich by any stretch, but I've gotten to do the things I dreamed of doing when I was 8 years old.
That's amazing. But you obviously wouldn't have achieved that at 8. By the way, just so you know, the dog has found her way through the curtains to divide into 2 rooms.
I heard Donka in the background.
Yeah, and I come looking and I'm like, why are these like heavy like soundproof drapes or whatever? How did they get moved to the side? And then I see Donka's head at the gate here. All right, Donka, come on, you can join us. James likes doggies too. Come on, 1, 2, 3. Oh, yes, girl, and then just don't don't leave the cat alone. Of course, the cat's on the desk too. All right, cat's gonna whack her in the head. That's just what we need for a podcast.
Animal fight.
Yeah, Ash. Come on, Doctor. Turn around the other way. Face
so yeah, that's how I think the white box stuff is what got me quote unquote known in the OSR.
Well, certainly, man. And now you've done even more. Your library of releases as Barrel Rider Games is stunning for anybody to look at. White Star went platinum, correct?
It did. On RPG Now, it went platinum. I don't know if it's platinum on Drive-Thru, but I know it's platinum on RPG Now.
I mean, White Star was your breakout release to some extent, but you've been building up to that for it seems like for years. And obviously, your Labyrinth Lord stuff prior to that, and you've written your own. I guess your own. It's the hero's journey based on White Box.
It starts there. It definitely starts there.
Because that's just an amazing treatment of pretty much if you wanted to run I hate to say simple, but if you wanted to run an OSR style Lord of the Rings feel game without being overpowered, it has that feel. It certainly does.
A lot of that, believe it or not, came from a conversation that there was a group podcast that Drink Spin Run did on Swords and Wizardry Appreciation Day a couple years ago.
Okay.
And Bill Webb, we had Bill Webb on there. And Bill was talking about how he didn't give out a lot of hit points after first level. And that got me thinking a lot. That got me thinking about how shields are misrepresented in D&D versus how they're used in real combat. And that led me to thinking about so many different things within D&D and fantasy role-playing in general that I would tweak if I were playing or if I were running my ideal game. And then I said, well, wait, I'm a game designer. I can just write this and, then I'll have a version that I love that I can play. And I got lucky enough that a friend of mine, Mike Herman, was like, hey, I'm bored and I used to do professional layout. Are you doing anything right now? And
now, just as a side note, who else is somebody going to reach out to and say, hey, listen, I'm bored. You got anything you want to write? That's how prolific you are, James.
I think you're I don't feel that way about it at all. Mike is a good friend of mine, and for him it was all in fun. He's an extremely generous person, and when we were doing the book, I said, that'd be wonderful. How much do I have to pay? And he said, no, don't worry about that. And I said to him, well, in that case, I want you to take complete control of the layout. I want you to do what you want. And he said to me, well, can I do the cover? And I said, the layout on the cover? Of course. He said, no, the art. And I went, yeah, sure, why not? And he came back with that cover that is so, I love it. I love that cover. That is evocative of Tolkien. And if you look at the hero's journey, a lot of the layout is reminiscent of the second edition player's handbook. And that was intentional because that's where I started.
Oh, okay. I knew it looked familiar. I just didn't know where to place it.
With the blue bars at the top and bottom and the kind of sepia shaded, tables, it was meant to be reminiscent of second edition, right down to there's a very little known CD that was put out that has stock art that was done by Larry Elmore.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And that's how I managed to get Elmore art in there.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I tracked down a copy of that CD on eBay. Wow.
That's pretty damn amazing, man.
So then that book came out, and little inside works here. When the book was done and the Lulu proofs came back good and it was a full color interior, that book off from Lulu, they take $35 right off the top.
Holy shit.
And that's why I sell it at $40. Because if I price it any higher, it's not, people aren't going to feel like they're getting anything out of it. If I price it, I literally can't price it much lower.
Mm-hmm.
But because because Mike was so generous, and because I'd already built up a wealth of stock art, plus the Larry Elmore CD wasn't as expensive as I expected it to be, the book didn't cost me a whole lot to produce. I took material that I'd previously used in the omnibus, changed it to suit Hero's Journey, changed the races to the way I wanted them to work, changed the combat to the way I wanted it to work, changed the magic items to the way I wanted them to work, and then just put it out. And it wasn't a financially motivated product in any way, shape, or form. It was, if somebody asked me, James, we want you to run D&D, I'm going to pull that off the shelf and be like, let's play this. Right down to the games like jamming advice. Like one of the key lines in the jamming advice of that book is the players are an active force for good in the setting, which is almost antithetical of the Conan Hyperborean style of old pulp D&D. Right. I am much more influenced by Tolkien than Conan and Howard, so that's where I came at it from, and that's what the book is supposed to represent. Not that you can't play it that way, you certainly can. But when I run my idealized version of D&D, not that I don't have fun running pulp sword and sorcery games, but whenever I'm running my idealized version, I want the players to be heroes.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same way, because I when I was younger, I ran a party of all evil PCs, and that quickly degenerated into a very just degeneration in general. It was. Yeah, I still feel unclean even thinking about it. But
evil games, in my opinion, run one of two ways. Either they are chaotic evil psychopaths who have no forethought beyond, murder, loot, pillage, which gets boring fast. Or you have a group of characters who are so evil and the players are so smart that the DM can't keep up.
Yeah, and
an evil party is a pain in the ass. A smart evil party is terrifying.
Yeah. So I pretty much, listen, when I run Swords and Wizardry Light, we left out alignment, so it's not generally an issue. But if I was running, Swords and Wizardry Complete, even though you don't really have good and evil, it's law and chaos. I don't mind those axes, because lawful and chaotic can be good or evil depending on what's going on. But I'm not comfortable running games for players. If they want to play evil characters for the sake of being evil, you're gonna have to find another DM. It's not gonna be my campaign.
When I was doing Hero's Journey, I used the 3-point alignment system, the law, neutrality, and chaos. But I very explicitly state that it is an alignment. It is the force of nature to which you are aligned. If you are lawful, you have sworn your soul to the services of law. If you are chaotic, you've sworn your soul to the service of chaos. It's not a personality or morality distinction. It's an allegiance. And I state explicitly in the book, 95%, if not more, people in a campaign, in a world, are going to be neutral, because it's not a morality judgment.
I think that's how even like AD&D, whenever your generic men-at-arms were neutral. Your shopkeepers were neutral unless they had a class. If they had a class, and you could expect them to be on the alignment chart. But yeah, the average person in any kind of those settings is going to be neutral, concerned about day-to-day life, concerned about living.
I agree completely. In the first Game of Thrones novel, the first Song of Ice and Fire novel, Game of Thrones, there's a line where somebody says, people don't give a shit about the return of the once noble king. They want a good harvest, crops, and no war.
Yeah. It's their concern, again, like we said, is living. How to eke out another year of existence, not being, I don't know, chess pieces on some morality chart. They're worried about, where am I going to put food on the table for my family.
Right. The vast majority, and that's kind of what makes the PC stand out. If you have a strong alignment, That's a dedication, and that's what makes you distinctive even beyond your race and class or race class.
Yeah, which makes druids all the much more special then, because you got to, if you think about it, then druid is the champion of the people, not any country, not any organization, but they are the champions of the day-to-day people, which is interesting. I never thought of it that way.
And druids are interesting because I mean most of what we've been talking about with neutrality is neutrality as concerned with your personal affairs and not much else. Druids are actually dedicated to neutrality as a force. They're dedicated to balance.
Yep.
And that is a whole interesting ball of wax when it comes to role playing. And I think that's what makes druids unique. The longest running character I ever played was a druid, and it's funny because they're not one of my favorite classes.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was playing in a 3rd edition Forgotten Realms game, and we started out at 3rd level, and we played for 2.5 or 3.5 years every single weekend. And that character was in his 30s when we stopped playing.
Damn.
Yeah, he never had an intelligence higher than 8. Yeah, I basically took Samwise the gardener and said, all right, let's make him a druid and see what happens.
Oh, so he was a halfling.
Of course.
Dude, I can't say anything because 9 times out of 10, what do I play?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all have our favorites, and I don't always play a halfling, but if it's an option and the party's not already got one, you can be pretty sure I'm going to play a halfling.
Right. Fair enough, man. Fair enough. So, all the stuff that you've worked on, how about telling the listeners what you are currently working on? Assuming that you can talk about the multitude of projects you got your fingers in right now, because I know there's more than one.
I just finished up a project for Fantasy Flight that I can't disclose due to non-disclosure agreement. I am currently freelancing for Gallant Knight Games, working on their D6 2nd edition Zorro role-playing game. I'm doing an adventure for that.
Nice.
I'm also working on one of their Tiny D6 games.
I like Tiny D6.
I love Tiny D6, man. It's really good. And let me tell you something. Alan, the guy who runs Gallant Knight Games, he is tops. He's a cool dude. I'm working on something for Eric Bloat, who is about to launch his Kickstarter for The Blackest of Deaths. Let's see. And then there's my own stuff. I am working on Danger Zone for White Star, which is a kind of Starfighter supplement in the same way Walking the Way was kind of your mysticism supplement. Okay. I am working on the follow-up supplement for Untold Adventures called Undiscovered Dungeons, which is a collection of new types, optional rules, and community-created adventures.
Oh, nice.
To highlight the community. And one of the things I wanted to do with Untold Adventures is it's a pared-down rule system, even lighter than White Box, but still sustainable for campaign play. But I wanted to get the community involved. So with Untold Adventures, one of my key design or key presentation elements is the game in digital form is always pay what you want. And because it's a community book, when it goes for sale, I'm going to price it very slightly above cost, just so I eventually will clear out the cost for like cover art and layout and stuff. And then once it reaches that, I'm going to make it at cost because
that's very fair.
Well, the community helped me create it. So it's not fair for me to make money off of the enthusiasm of others. That's just not cool.
No, I got you.
I licensed an IP for White Star, my first licensed IP. There is a company called Killer Bootleg, which makes custom action figures in the style of the 1980s. And these things sell at like Comic-Cons for like $75. They're nuts. And I stumbled upon this guy, and he did this figure called Phantom Starkiller, which is like Skeletor meets Darth Vader meets heavy metal. And I was like, that's fucking cool. That needs to be in White Star. And I was like, yeah, but I don't want to rip on this guy's idea. So I sent him an email saying, hey, man, I want to do an adventure based on your IP. And we came to a licensing agreement. So I'm going to use his art and his assets and his setting and his IP to write a supplement for White Star.
Well, that's cool. That's really cool.
It's pretty neat. I'm pretty excited about that. Oh, I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting. Oh, geez.
Well, I know there are projects that you have. different levels of progression.
Cybermancer is a long, slow, inevitable project that's coming. That is my homage to cyberpunk role-playing from the 80s. Because in every single version of cyberpunk role-playing, computer hacking sucks. Yeah. And I love playing computer hackers. So I wanted to write a game where I could play a computer hacker and not feel like a schlub. So that is still in the works. I have 50 or 60 pages drafted of Radbox, which is white box post-apocalyptic. I mean,
that should be fun.
Oh, I was really pleased. It took me forever to come up with a gasoline mechanic because gasoline is so important. And it's very everything I write is based on stuff that is heavily inspired by stuff that I love. So this draws more from Fallout and Mad Max than those are my preferred post-apocalypse games. So that is all in various stages of development. And because I have ADD brain, today I was writing for the Untold Adventure supplement. Tomorrow I might work on Cybermancer. 2 weeks from now I might go back to Danger Zone. But my brain always has to be working on something.
Right, and being able to switch between projects means nothing ever gets boring. You probably hit less, internal blockages when you can keep on changing pace and changing your vision.
It most of the time is the case. Sometimes it's really frustrating. Like I walked away from Cybermancer. I was like, I'm not going to do this. This is impossible. I just can't do this. And then one day, just hit me. Boom! This is how to do it. I think this might work. Holy crap! This actually works. So I was able to come back to it. But sometimes it's frustrating. I think from a consumer's point of view, because I'm a one-man company. I work a full-time job. I have an hour commute each day to work, so I can't produce at the rate I would like. And because I've got all these projects I'm excited about, I talk about them all the time. And people are like, "Where is it? Where is it?" And I totally get that. That's fair. People are excited. They want to buy my products, and that's awesome. I hate when a creator or publisher shits on their fan base because they're the ones giving you money. They're the ones supporting you. You don't shit where you eat. My fans don't owe me anything, and I owe them everything, and that's just a fact. So I want to get stuff out that's quality. And I want to get it in a timely fashion, but the real world often prevents that. I've got issues going on outside of my day job, in my personal life that I don't feel like going into detail here. But I have members of my immediate family who have pretty extensive special needs, and that consumes a lot of my time. I will never, give up doing this, not as long as I can type. But it does create delays. And sometimes you have amazing strides of creativity. I wrote White Star was 35. The original White Star was 35,000 words. I wrote it in 6 weeks.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was just like fingers just flying. It went from concept to first draft complete in 6 weeks. Whereas Cybermancer, I'm 2.5 years in. Or White Star Galaxy Edition took 2 years, and that was supposed to be a base compilation product, so therefore it would be easy. So much for that. But it got done. Cybermancer is making progress. I haven't forgotten about Radbox, but today I was working on Undiscovered Dungeons. Tomorrow I might work on Radbox. It is what grabs me at the moment because I write best when I'm excited about that thing in the moment.
Of course. And that is awesome. That like I said, James, I've known you now for a long time, and I have an idea as to how your mind works, and God bless you, man, because you are certainly one of the most productive one-man shows in this industry that has a full-time job and other responsibilities, and it's amazing. I watch what you can do.
There are times when I've tried to walk away for a period away just to get away from it, and I get stressed if I don't do it.
Well, that makes sense because this is your listen, and I can understand this. Writing is an escape. Even when I'm doing blog posts, it's an escape. The world around you just takes a step back for a bit, and whatever's nagging you, whatever issues you might have going on, aren't there when you're writing because it becomes your world.
Yeah, and a lot of my headspace time, I have an hour commute to work every day and back, and that's when I'll be thinking. Somebody said, well, "What's your writing process?" Like I go, "It'll be really cool to do this," and then I do it because I want to write things that excite me, and I think when you write things that genuinely excite you, then that comes through on the page. I think people can sense when somebody's phoning it in.
Oh yeah, come on, it is very obvious when that stuff happens, which is a shame. And again, you have people who can focus, and then you have if you consider yourself having attention deficit, just look at Ken Whitman.
I'd rather not.
Yeah, well, I know.
Well, the thing with Ken Whitman is he's a thief and a liar who takes advantage of people's good faith or their gullibility.
Yeah.
And I can't abide that. As a creator of fantasy and sci-fi role-playing games, I sell illusions too. These are fantasies. These are, and in the end, I am selling words that people use to make up stories. There's yes, there's a book, but there's really no physical product you're selling. Ken sells a promise that he will never fulfill. And that just pisses me off to no end, because not only is it out and out theft, it damages other people who attempt to crowdfund projects. It damages the credibility of perfectly sincere and genuine creators. Like right now, Silver Boulay is running their Creeping Cold 5e Kickstarter. Those, Rocky and Jason, or Rocky and Ian, are two of the most passionate, sincere creators out there right now. And they deserve all the respect and all the credit. Glenn Seal produces amazing stuff with his Midderland stuff. They deserve the support, and they deserve to not have faith in their products that they are crowdfunding tarnished by assholes like Ken Whitman.
Oh God, yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I'm happy actually when the successful yet failed Kickstarters, the ones that fund yet fail to produce anything. When the creator falls on the sword and is honest about their own faults, for me that's closure. I can let it. I can leave it and let it go away. It's when you get the false promises that go on for 7 years that you kind of like, man.
Well, yeah, and where nobody believes your bullshit except you.
Yeah. Well, nobody believes it, but then you always have that loyal circle that no matter what's going on, it's like, oh, we believe you and we love you. It's like, Jesus. Sorry.
No, I get it. And sometimes I wonder how many people say that, but as they're typing it, go, F this guy, but, are trying to be nice. I think that people aren't as foolish as Ken Whitman thinks they are, but I think they're nicer than even he thinks they are. I think they don't. I think very few people want to cause problems or want to contribute pain to other people's lives, regardless of whether the person they shit on them or not.
True.
So I think some people say, oh, it's okay. And then they close their computer and it's not okay. But they never vocalize that. And,
well,
those are the people who are going to look at Creeping Cold and be like, I don't know, man, I've been screwed on so many RPG Kickstarters, and, I don't know. That damage, so Ken's damage of their goodwill impacts everything else.
Gareth Sharka, people that, are 7.5 years late on their projects, they're the ones that people look at. And I keep, me, I keep feet to the fire, the people that I think need their feet being held to the fire. But I'm still a huge backer of Kickstarters. I still think it's an amazing way for creators to get their projects into the hands of people who want it. And like with Ian and Rocky, which I shared there earlier today, we're recording this on Saturday night. Earlier, I put up my blog post highlighting their project, Creeping Cold. And one of the things that I love about them is like we are ready to print and we are prepared to ship. The module has color as well as black and white paper handouts and maps for ease of the DM's printer. Once we have our funding in hand, we intend to be at the printer within 10 days. That is the kind of project that you should want to back. That's the one where you should be able to like brush the cobwebs aside and say, you know what, I've been screwed in the past, but these guys are going to do it right.
Well, exactly, and they are going to do it right. I have 100% faith in this too. Same with Glenn. Same with 90% of the people out there on Kickstarter that I've seen. But the fact that they have to now go to these extra lengths because of people getting screwed, because of the Rifts debacle, or not Rifts, but the Robotech, was it?
The Robotech Tactics debacle.
Yeah, where they lost the license before they finished fulfilling their obligations.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, my suspicion is that Palladium Games knew the license was limited. They knew what the risks were, and it was a cash grab.
Oh, undoubtedly. I don't doubt that. And that when you take advantage of the goodwill of people who have supported your products, fuck you. It angers me so much, because I have seen companies that do the exact opposite. I've seen companies like Frog God Games who will go out of their way to make sure that they have a satisfied customer. Most of the small publishers within the OSR do the same, and they will back you up. I remember a couple years ago, there was a small publisher who was literally copy and pasting my laboratory classes and selling.
I remember, yeah.
And people were like, this is not cool. And what did the community do? They went to this guy's storefront and they one-starred all his products, and they said, this is a theft of this product. And OBS got wind of it and made him stop. And, I didn't go after the guy. I didn't have to.
No.
The community, was there to, and that's the thing, the community supports its own. The OSR and the gaming industry as a whole is, people don't realize, it's a small town. If you act like an asshole and you screw people might not talk about it publicly, but everybody knows. And if you're a stand-up person and you treat people right, even when shit, gets thrown against you, that's not true. People are like, wait a minute, this sounds fishy. So it's almost, I don't want to say it's completely self-policing, but there's certainly a self-policing element.
Oh, most assuredly. And when somebody's in need, the community pulls together. I mean, that's I left a profession where when there was somebody in need for, huge, healthcare bills for themselves or a family member, no matter whether you like the individual on a personal level or not, you pulled together because that is what we did. And I see that within our community here within gaming. And it's a beautiful thing, and it makes me feel very much at home because it's what I had as a profession for 20 years, and I see that same attitude of supporting each other here.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that is the case. Now, at the same time, there's accountability too, because, the OSR community and gaming will generally, help each other out. You act like a chump, you get called on it. And
yes,
it's actually weird. It's one of the reasons I won't, Barrel Rider Games has never done a Kickstarter. We did one Indiegogo when I did the class compendium, and I was 2 weeks late on my delivery, and I was nobody cared. Nobody were like, that's fine. I cared. It pissed me off. So I will never, and I would say never, but I can never imagine a situation where I would kickstart a Barrel Rider Games project, because I don't want the circumstances in my personal life and the obligations I have in my personal life to lead to disappointment, damage of my credibility and reputation within the community. it's not fair to people. If I tell them a product's going to be out by X date, which you have to do on a Kickstarter, then I want it out by then. Now, with the needs of the people in my life that I love, I can have delays of 2, 3, 4, 6, 10 weeks. So that's not fair to them. So by jumping from product to product, waiting for the revenue from my previous products to allow me to have the resources to make what I want, and working with the means that I have, I can put out products without disappointing people more than, oh man, I wish this was out.
No, that certainly makes sense. And even, listen, you can look at James Raggi and the throwaway date that he gave for the ref book for Lamentations of the Flame Princess latest printing, and he threw out a date that I don't remember, was it 4 or 5 years in the future, a joke date that he'll never get to the point.
It was 5 years.
And he's later than that date anyway. So
right, and regardless of how you feel about Raggi, and I'm not a huge Lamentations fan as a game I would play. I think as a game, there's a market for it. There's some cool innovations in it. It's not a game that I'm huge into, but in interviews, like Matt Finch has done a couple interviews with Raggi, and he seems like a good enough dude. Okay, he's got his niche, he's doing his thing, good on him. But that goodwill gets eaten away.
Yeah,
people eventually like, you know what, and that's on Raggi, but the fallout, or to use that as an example, that's on Raggi, but the fallout from that is then people don't support others who haven't lost that credibility. They see it as a trend or indicative of a trend. So when you don't fulfill your obligations, it damages the community as a whole.
That's a very valid point. Yeah, and I've had those discussions with people who, I'm never going to back another Kickstarter because of people like Whitman, of people like Skarka. These are the outliers.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think like, to get back to the Raggi example, I don't think Raggi is screwing anybody. I think it's just, shit happened.
Right.
And he's had his fair share of difficulties recently anyway. Whereas people like Whitman clearly don't give a fuck and are clearly looking to just take people's money and run. But in the end, the results are still the product is not available when it was said it would be available.
Yeah. No, you're right. Spot on. So, James, since we're getting close to our wrap-up time, what is there something that we haven't discussed that is on your mind that you'd like to discuss?
I
don't normally throw that one out there, but or it might be something that you want to discuss that we can't discuss. There's also those issues.
There's all kinds of things you and I could talk about that with it, we can't talk about.
Yeah.
Just because or the nature of our friendship. God, I'm trying to think of something that I haven't mentioned. Because me, I don't have a filter.
Like I do. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but Frank Menser incident.
Oh well, dude, that's still burned into my mind. I was thinking,
forever.
Yes. I've told that story. I'm sure you have too.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's good times. The couple things I want to mention: anybody who comes to North Texas this year, this will be 2019. Remember that if you see whoever wins the Three Castles Award, that you are obligated to then go and kick Eric in the doodads.
Allegedly. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now. If somebody does actually do such, I'm filing charges. I'm a retired cop. I'm certainly not going to take a kick to the nuts and not file it. Although, hey, Gareth Sharko threatened to punch me in the throat. So come on.
Did he really?
Yes.
Well, hold on. Well, let's not be so hard on Gareth. He's clearly working hard on Far West while he was freelancing on Star Wars. When he said he was working on Far West.
It was Star Trek that he was.
No, it was Star Wars too, dude.
Oh, he did both. I didn't realize it was both. I just knew it was Star Trek.
I can get you links.
What using his pseudonym Brophy?
I don't know. I'd have to look in the book. I think he actually used his real name.
Yeah,
But I know for a fact that he was freelancing on Star Wars while he was saying he was working on Far West. But
well,
not that I want to call anybody out, but you call it like you see him.
he'd actually have to get out of his chair and stand up. At that point he might be out of his breath.
You know what's a shame though? You know what the real damn shame of that is? The guy's not a bad game designer at all.
No, actually, he's a good game designer.
He's a great. He did a game called Underground, and it was this weird modern fantasy, kind of like Neverwhere subway urban magic game that the mechanics used subway tokens. It's a really cool indie. Yeah, it's called Underground. If you get a chance, look it up. And he wrote. It's a great friggin' game. But my wife and I both loved it. But and his was it Thrilling Tales he called it? His pulp?
Yeah, I think that was it. That was his pulp game.
So the guy's got talent. And I wouldn't besmirch anybody for that, but don't stop pissing on my leg and telling me it's raining, whoever you are.
Well, he has a very large presence on Twitter, so I'm sure so social media is a bit of a distraction for him.
Okay, so does Cardi B.
Point taken.
And that's another thing. When people start saying, well, I have this, I have that, I'm proud of my accomplishments. They don't make me better than anybody else I sit down to a table with. I don't care who you are. You're not any better than me. I'm not any better than you. I don't care if you've published, whether if Luke Gygax sat down at my table, I would treat him no different than the 7-year-old kid who's never played D&D before. Because in the end, you're there to game.
Right.
And you're there to game as peers and hopefully by the end of a session as friends. And if you create an implied hierarchy within that context, it's impossible. I have people like, oh my God, I love your stuff. Nah, dude, oh my God, you worked on something. Nah, dude, it's just house rules that the company approved. If you think about it, every supplement ever is just house rules that somebody agreed to publish.
Fair enough. Yeah, when I first, my first North Texas, I was a bit, I don't want to say overwhelmed, but I did have that feeling of, oh my God, I'm meeting these people that have been in the hobby or were founders of TSR and such. It was overwhelming to meet these people, and now I no longer have that overwhelming awe. Well, I had my Jeff Grubb incident, but a couple of years ago, but
for the most part, I've had instances go both ways. I met a one designer who, when I met the individual, I shook their hand and I said, I just want you to know your game changed my life. And the designer looked at me, smirked, and said, yeah, I get that a lot. I was instantly put off.
Right.
I was like, okay, nope, never mind. Whereas I met another designer who had written equally life-changing stuff for me, and he was just a dude. And we just sat, and I stammered through my first 2 sentences, and by the end of the conversation, we were like 2 guys just talking shop. It was awesome. I think at this point, the only person in the industry that intimidates me is Tim Kask, because I'm afraid he's going to reach across the table, punch me in the face, and tell me to game harder. And I would love him for it. But yeah, and then you hear people like Jim Wampler and Ian McCarty who are like, oh, it's just Tim, he's cool. They're past that, and I can respect, and I'm not. And we're all just gamers. We're all just rolling dice. We're all playing pretend. So remember that you can be proud of your work, but your work never makes you better than anybody else in the hobby. And awards, as awesome as it is to work on books that win Ennies and Origin awards, they're validation from strangers.
True.
That's what it is. It's a validation from a stranger. It doesn't make it not cool, but you have to see it for what it is. And they can be strangers whose opinions you respect. But I would rather win an award from my wife or daughter or my friends than people I care about than the commission that decides who wins an Ennie. Not that winning an Ennie isn't awesome. It's neat. And it helps with imposter syndrome, which I suffer from seriously.
Well, you're not the only one, so don't feel bad.
I'm a pretty firm believer that if you don't have imposter syndrome, then you probably let your ego get a hold of you too much. That or you're much more stable than I am, which is also equally likely. But yeah, I mean, just sit down and have fun. I think that's a lot of what the OSR is about. Let's get back to, as Tom Wilson's magazine is called, let's get back to basics. There's another genius game designer who doesn't get enough credit. Tom Wilson is awesome. Dude can do some amazing stuff. Doesn't get recognized. Speaking of design, I'm trying to ramble about designers who don't get recognized enough. One of my early OSR heroes came to my attention because we have the same last name.
Oh, yes.
Early on, I was a big Labyrinth Lord guy, and one of the big Labyrinth Lord publishers is Small Niche Games, which is run by Pete Spahn. Now, you don't hear the name Spahn very often. It is not a common name. To see another Spahn in the OSR, I was like, whoa. And we ended up talking, and like, well, who were your relatives? Because naturally, we figure we have to be related somewhere.
Right.
At best, we might be related 6 or 7 generations back, maybe. But that is a guy who his Amherst stuff, his Amherst setting stuff, and his adventures are freaking amazing. And most people that I know of don't mention them when it comes to BX content. And I feel like they should be. Because Pete does amazing stuff. His Operation White Box, his World War II White Box hack is freaking amazing.
Yeah, it is. I was a history major, and I love it because it's just a great insight.
Yeah, But people, he doesn't get the recognition he deserves. There's just so many. You say, you mentioned that I'm like this prolific designer or whatever. There are a lot of people out there making good content, and people who win awards for their content and then don't get noticed much after that. Mike Evans, who did Hubris, he writes solid DCC stuff, and people don't. I feel like people don't look at his stuff as much. So I mean, we're a community. Poke around and see who's hanging out and see what they're doing, and share people's projects that you like, whether they're quote unquote popular or not. Because if you don't share it, it's not going to get to be popular. And when something becomes popular that you really like, that's cool, because then you have something to talk about with other people. Like, oh my God, this is awesome! Isn't this really cool? And you don't have to, and don't do the, well, I liked it before it was popular thing, because that makes you a shithead. It does. Again, you're not better than anybody else rolling dice. Be excited about what you're excited about, whether it's an OSR game, whether it's a more modern game, whether it's 5e or First Ed or Osric or DCC or whatever you're excited about. Be excited about it, and share it, and then let people be excited at you about what they're excited about, and maybe you'll find something cool in it. That's what feeds the community. That's what feeds me as a creator. When I get excited about something, I want to start typing like mad. My voice is running faster now because I'm talking about things that, I'm getting excited about stuff.
You're passionate.
I am, and this is a great community to be a part of. In the Untold Adventures, the deluxe edition, the dedication is to the OSR community that saved my life, and that's 100% true. These people I've met in this community have gone from being associates to being personal heroes to being friends, and that's huge. I always joke that one of the first year I went to North Texas was 2017, and I was miserable the whole time. Not the whole time, but a lot of the time, because I was nervous. I didn't know anybody. I'd never met anybody in person.
Right.
I was up for this big award, and that kind of put me on edge. And a lot of other the community had been kind enough to send me there, so I felt almost like an ambassador kind of thing, and it was a lot of stress. And when I left, I got home and I said to my wife, I'm not going to go to Texas again. That was 4 days of stress. I don't want to do that again. And when I went back, and Ian McGarty said to me, he said, dude, go a second time. He said, go a second time, you'll have a lot less baggage, and if you still don't like it, then you don't ever go again. And I went the second time, and the instant I knew I was home, and I say this now that North Texas is my home, I was walking into the lobby. I had just checked into my room, but I picked my bag up. I got 3 steps towards the elevator, and I hear shouted across the lobby, James Spahn, with a big old Gary laugh, and I turn and there's Matt Finch.
There you go.
And I was just like, yeah, I'm home. And I sat out, you sit out there at the smoking area and you're cutting up with people. And I played in some great games. I ran the hell out of that mouth. I mean, you saw me at the Mouth of Doom.
Oh, yeah.
I was just having a blast. And it was exactly what it's all about. And I had some bumps along the way. The guy had to kick off my table because he was being an asshole. But I didn't let the few moments where things weren't perfect damage all the perfect moments I did have. And I had a lot of them. God, it was a good con. And I'm so looking forward to the next one this year.
Listen, I love all 3 of the big OSR, heavy cons, whether it's Game Hole, Gary Con, or North Texas. But North Texas is my home away from home. It really, you feel you're with your people, your community, everybody there is an extended friend, and it's just a wonderful feeling.
Remember when you were a kid and you would go over to your buddy's house and you would all go like into the basement or into the spare room and you would play D&D for like 3 days straight?
Yeah.
That's North Texas.
Good point. I like that.
That's pretty much what North Texas is. And you have great moments that have nothing to do with gaming. I remember the first really in-depth conversation I had with Bad Mike, who is an amazing person in spite of the smell.
Oh, snap.
He pulled me aside and he said, James, there's something I want to talk to you about. And I'm like, oh God, did I piss somebody off somewhere? And he's like, so you're a big Star Wars guy, right? You worked on Star Wars and you're a big Star Wars. So yeah. He's like, and I hear you really, really like The Last Jedi. And you could see him getting nervous. I was like, oh yeah, I loved it. I think it's the best Star Wars movie they've put out. And he was like, why? And he wasn't like being confrontational about it. He did not enjoy it, and I did, and he wanted to know my point of view. And we had this great conversation about what we liked and what we didn't like, and it was fun, and we cut up about that. And now I keep threatening to dance at the midnight auction, and he won't let me.
Well, yeah, but then you say dance in the midnight auction. What kind of a dance was it again?
I want to beat Rob. I want to outdo Rob.
And for those of you that don't know, Rob was out there in speed. That's Mike's brother. He was out there in Speedos last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could do it. I think I've got the skills.
I think on that note, I think we're gonna have to bid everybody adieu.
I thought it'd be something good to close on.
Yeah, Jesus, James, as always, an amazing time, man.
Oh, dude, we cut up like this. For those who don't know, Eric and I cut up like this pretty regularly.
Oh yeah, I'll be down at the my local pub having lunch. James will call at his lunchtime, and the next thing you know, it's 40 minutes later, and it's like, oh shit! All right, yeah, you gotta go back to work.
Yeah, shit. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's at least once or twice a week. So
yeah. Wow. As always, James, thank you. I'm very happy that we got to finally get a chance to do this as a recording as opposed to our normal chat, I guess you could say. We have a game tomorrow night, don't we?
We do. Be careful with your fire.
Yeah, indeed.
Oh, did you see what Ian asked me in the group chat? He's like, "Can I bring a fire extinguisher?" I said, "No, but there's a bunch of charred bodies you could probably beat flames out with."
Oh Jesus! Lovely. Look, we have to do some dental. We have to pull the teeth. I'll get the teeth for the dental recognition.
The question you have to ask yourself is did the Grey Ooze survive?
You know what? I am going to definitely say it did not. But then again, my character coming in will have no clue. So it really makes no difference. No, it makes no difference. Well, as the dog has been sneezing in my arms, I guess allergies get to you too, don't they, Doctor? We're gonna close out this episode. Again, thank you, James. And
Glad to be here, man.
yeah, I'll include a link to James's drive-through store front, so you guys can check out his stuff.
Oh, important note about the drive-through store. The original version of White Star and the companion are both available in Pay What You Want in both PDF and print formats for softcover and hardcover. When you buy physicals of the Pay What You Want products, you do have to pay at least enough to cover the cost of the product.
There you go. You can't get better than that.
It's about 230 digest pages of material that's Pay What You Want, including the physical.
That's awesome. Well, there you go, folks. On that note, as always, God bless, be well, roll those dice, and I will talk with you all tomorrow, and you can be guaranteed we'll bring James back again. So if you enjoyed this, there'll be more at some point.
It'll probably be in a police report after Texas, but you know.
Only if I'm getting cooked in the nuts, man, which it better not happen. You know, I am not signing off on this, just so you all know.
Eric, I have size 15 wide feet. It'll be amazing.
Yeah, no, it will not be amazing.
We'll get Hobbs to film it.
If you're not worried about me being upset, Rach will be upset.
Well, that scares me a little bit, but you know what? I could distract her.
Mm-hmm. And then she'll track you down.
No. And then I'll just tell her that Zach did it.
Yeah, no. First off, she knows who did it. She'll know. And secondly, man, you piss off Rach. You've heard her vent.
Oh, I have. It's beautiful. Because I wasn't the victim.
Right. Well, you will be if anybody kicks me in the nuts. She'll be tracking down James.
Never. Guys, you're just no fun. You're just no fun. You know what? I'm leaving. I'm leaving this stupid fireside chat. If I can't kick you in the nuts, I'm out of here.
Yeah, there you go. Thank God he's not going to kick me in the nuts. Folks, I'll talk with you later. Be good. Bye-bye.